in my experience, there's awareness without boundary, and then there's the torch, you call it, the focusing of awareness. How does that, could you speak to that, the difference and how that occurs from this full awareness, this fullness, to this focus on pointing it in directions with intention or attention, from awareness to attention? It's a focusing.
Yes, yes. Awareness never actually focuses. It's always wide open in all directions. It's only when an apparent object comes into existence, an object that is singled out from the rest of the totality, and that singling out creates what we call the object. It's only when that takes place that there seems to be this focus of attention onto an object. But awareness never really knows an object. Thought thinks that it knows an object. But awareness doesn't know a multiplicity and diversity of objects and selves. Awareness has to first take the shape of mind before experience can be divided up into objects and selves. Once that has taken place, then we can give one of those objects or one of those selves attention. In other words, it is thought that abstracts from the seamless intimacy of all experience. Seamless because it's not made up of parts, and intimate because it's this close to awareness. It is thought that abstracts objects and selves, separate objects and separate selves, from that seamless intimacy. But in order to do that, in order to abstract an object from this seamless intimacy, we have to first overlook our true nature of awareness and imagine that we are a subject. So when this simple knowing of our own being is overlooked, at that moment we, awareness, seem to collapse or contract into a separate subject. And at that moment, a world of objects and others come into apparent existence. That subject can then pay that object attention. But awareness is not the subject of experience, although sometimes as a halfway stage we talk about the witnessing presence of awareness, I, the subject, knowing the objects of the body-mind. That's a legitimate halfway stage, and we'll go there sometimes this week. But awareness never actually becomes the witnessing subject of a multiplicity and diversity of objects. The subject and the object, they arise together. They're created in thought's imagination. It's thought that divides this seamless intimacy into parts, abstracts a self that knows and an object that is known. It's thought that says that knowing takes place in here and the existence of the object takes place out there. But for awareness, knowing and being are the same thing. In other words, awareness never experiences things as things. It knows things much more intimately than that. It knows everything as itself. It doesn't know a world as a world. It knows the apparent world as itself. In other words, from awareness's point of view, it never comes in contact with anything other than itself. It only knows itself. However, once thought has abstracted a separate self, once thought has overlooked our true nature, and has imagined instead that we are a separate, limited self, then what we are just inhabits this little corner of experience called my body. And everything and everyone else are projected outside and become objects and others. And from that moment on, we live our lives based on the belief and the feeling that what I am is a separate, limited self, moving around in a world of objects and others. But there's only one thing that separate self truly longs for, and that is happiness or peace. All separate selves seek happiness or peace alone. Now, what that separate self is truly seeking is to dissolve as a separate self, to be returned to its real self, to be unveiled. That's what the separate self spends its life seeking its own death, seeking its own disappearance. Everything the separate self does in the outside world is orientated only to finding the knowing of its own being, finding its own being as it really is. This dimensionless, objectless, transparent awareness.